here we are in Blender, latest version. This is the splash screen. You can check 3.4.1. You can put in whatever settings you like. I use the default ones. If you're really not sure what to do, go with default, and if you clicked away and you lost that screen, just click up here on this little icon, go to splash screen, and you'll see the version. I'm going to maximize this screen, and yeah, I'm going to turn this little cube into an outhouse. So this is our default scene. Please have a look down on the bottom left. The only setting I've really changed in Blender is to load in screencast keys. So if I click with my left mouse, it'll tell you. If I right click, it'll tell you. So you'll see this menu pop up. If I want a middle mouse, I'm holding down on that, you'll see, and I'm moving around. So hopefully between what I say and what you see me do down here on the left of the screen, it'll get you going. The other little habit that I have is I touch type. My fingers sit ASDF on the keyboard. I'm not a gamer so much, well I do, but WASD is not where your fingers are going to live. Your little finger's on the A, S for the ring finger, middle finger D, and your index should sit on the F. Okay, anyway, I'm going to turn this cube here into an outhouse. So I'm going to start by renaming it. I'm going to click on the object, and you'll see in the scene collection it's called cube. So if I double click, I'm going to call this outhouse, and then I'll push return, and it's now renamed. I'm in a mode called object mode, and if I click on it, you'll see the various different types of modes. I'm just going to change between the two main ones by pushing tab on my keyboard, and you'll see that it's changed to edit mode, and it will just go back and forth between edit and object mode. Okay. Next thing I want to point out is this colorful little viewpoint preset selector. Now I'm going to click on this red X, and it's going to change my view to look along this red line. So just watch. There we go. Now if I zoom in, I just did that by scrolling on the wheel, you'll notice a few things. There's this orange dot. What the heck is that? Well, that helps Blender to know where the object is located, and at the moment it's right in the center of the world. So again, back to this view. I'm going to go from object mode to edit mode. So push tab and just check that you're in edit mode as well. So I can now grab bits of this and move it around. So how would I do that? Well, it's G for grab, so I push with my keyboard G. I can move that little point of the cube. It's called a vertice, but I don't want to move just one, so I can even highlight the whole lot and then G for grab. But why did I only get the front? Well, it's to do with the selection. So I'm going to adjust the selection type slightly. So watch my mouse up here. I'm going to change this X-ray so I can sort of see a little bit through it. So if I do grab all of them, so I'm holding down on the left mouse and I draw a rectangle, and then I take my finger off and I let it go. Now when I go to grab, G for grab, I'm grabbing the whole thing. Now I don't want to make a Leaning Tower of Pisa, so I just want to grab it and lock it in. So if I just push Z now, you'll see this blue line appearing. Now why Z? Okay, so I'm going to just click and drop it right there. Z is the axis, and on this screen it's up and down. So I just constrained is the word. So G for grab, and that can move left and right based on my view at the moment, but I don't want to go in the green line direction. I just want to constrain it to Z, push Z, there it is. And then when I want to drop it, I just left click. Now I don't see the mouse very clearly there, so I can get rid of these buttons here. Push the letter T and goodbye. I don't really use the buttons. I won't encourage the use of those buttons, but if you want them back, you can push T. Most of the tools I'm going to use are there, but again, I won't encourage the use of them. So middle mouse, and I'll just look from a different side, and I'm going to change this toggle X-ray. I kind of like the solid appearance. Okay, so I'm going to have to make this taller. Now, I eyeballed this to begin with. I just grabbed it and went G, Z, and I'm going to say, hey, that's about as tall as I want it. So if you look at what's going on here, I've got 1, 2, 3, sort of 4 blocks going up, and it's about 2 wide. So you're just eyeballing most of this. It's not important to get it exactly the same. So far I've used this rectangle selection. My favorite is the letter C. C for circle. I push it and then I get that circle. I'm going to change the size of it by scrolling. It's not showing that I'm scrolling and the mouse down on the bottom left, which is a bit of a shame. But anyway, I'm going to use it a bit like a spray paint. I'm going to click that one and I'm holding down on the mouse and then this one. Now if I get one that I don't want by accident, say that, I can deselect it with a middle mouse. So once I'm finished with this selection tool, I can drop it easily with the right mouse, goodbye, or if I had it there still, I can push escape, but that takes more movement from my wrist, so I tend not to do that. So I just tend to type. So again, C for circle, paint those two, and then drop the circle select, do it with the right click. I'm going to pull this up, so I'm going to go G for grab, but I don't want to go crazy. I just want to go up, so I just push Z, and that's going to constrain it to being up. Now I could go and eyeball it, and I think that's what I did to begin with, but what you'll notice up here, there's some numbers. So G, and you'll see that stuff fluctuating. I lock in Z, and if I was to, for example, type in 1.2, it's too high, so I'll push escape, don't like that. So G for grab, Z for the Z axis, and if I type 0.2, then it goes up. I think maybe that's not enough, so maybe do it again. G, Z, 0.4. Okay, that's enough of a lean. If I'm making an outhouse, I don't know, maybe I'm some farmer and I've got some leftover bits of wood, I'm just going to eyeball this stuff. The lean here is to get the rain running down the back. So put the door at the front. I've had a few students put it at the side or some other place. It's up to you. But I sensibly would put it at the front. Well, I think it's sensible. So anyway, back here, this part's going to become the roof. So I'm going to change my selection mode from vertices, which are the little dots, to a face. So if I click this one, you'll notice up here, I don't use the mouse for this usually. I usually just push the number 3. So notice these little buttons change. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I use the keys for that. It's a whole lot faster. So anyway, when I click here, I've now got the face selected. I can't just grab it and go sideways, but I am going to rip it off. In this case, I'm going to use the letter key, P for pleasure. Anyway, separate. I don't know where P and separate came from, but I'm going to separate by the selection. So I've only got the roof selected. I click it. It's now separate. We'll look over in the scene collection. I've got Outhouse, and the new part, I just put .001 on the end. You'll notice there's orange and then a slightly more red version. What I want is to have one selected, but it's still got that slightly red color, so it's kind of be careful on here. So what I tend to do, notice the outside is just a different color. I'm going to go to object mode, deselect everything by just clicking in a gray area over here. And then I can click on this, and I don't want to go into the details of multiple selections, but this is what I want, just selected all by itself. I'm going to rename it to being roof. It's a really good idea just to name things as you go. Now I'm going to make this bigger. There'll be a problem. I'll push S for scale, and then you'll notice this dotted line coming from my cursor, and when I scale it, it goes flying in the sky. That's because the roof has this dot, this little, the origin is down here, and it's scaling based on that. The easiest way is I'm going to go to edit mode, and I highlight it and I scale it. Just going to change. Minus all the details, essentially it's scaled based on where it is, not based on the origin. Or when I say where it is, where it looks to be. So anyway, that's going to be a bit bigger. So again, if I was some farmer making a an outhouse, I'd be, hey, how big does the roof need to be? I'm going to eyeball it. So when I look at that, I think, hey, that's about right. But look at the numbers in the top left. The scale in that X, Y, and Z direction, about 1.3. So if you're going to follow along, I'm just going to do it again to go S for scale and then type 1.3 and push return or enter, depending what it says on your keyboard. So now I've just made that a little bit bigger. Cool. So we've got a box, we've got a roof. Not going super fast, I hope. Cool. So we got our roof. Now I'm going to go back to the outhouse body, and now it's time to put a door on. What you might notice is the selection color's gone red. That's because I've got multiple items. So just be really careful on this multiple item selection. It'll throw you. So just go to object mode. I would normally do that with tab. And then I'll deselect by just clicking in the gray region here. And then when I click on this object, I've just selected the one face of that object. If I go to push tab, it'll go to object mode. I'm going to chop this up so I can put a door in the right place. The tool that I'm going to use here, you'll notice me moving it all around. If you want to, you can just sort of read what I'm doing. But it's a lot of middle mouse, a lot of holding shift to grab it and move it left and right, shift to grab up and down. Without shift, it'll just spin, but with shift, you can grab it and move it up and down. Because if I don't, it just sort of twists around. Just have a play. You'll learn by playing. Anyway, loop cuts. The tool loop cut can be found over there. I'm not even going to show it because I dislike how it works. But Ctrl R. That's our loop cut. Now, if I hover over this vertical line here, it thinks I want to cut across that line and go all the way around. And you'll see it appearing and disappearing depending on where my mouse is. It's essentially asking, is this the place? And I'll confirm yes with a left click. Now it knows, hey, that's where I want to cut, but it doesn't know the height. The default is halfway. And if that's where you want it, you can just right click and it jumps to halfway, like there. That's not what I want though. Command Z, because I'm undoing. See, Command Z, that's your friend. So Control R, and then I'm confirming, and I'm going to move this up to about where I think the top of the door should be. Somewhere around here, and I'll confirm it by left clicking. So that's the height of where my door is going to be. Just eyeball it. What do you think the height of a door should look like? Next, Control R again, but this time I'm going to go across the bottom section. Now you might notice this yellow shape goes down the front, across the bottom, and up the back. See? The roof's been ripped off, so it doesn't go all the way around. So I'm going to now scroll on my mouse wheel. So up it goes. I'm choosing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little cuts. So again, it went from 1. So I'm just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's what it did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's not going to be the end of the world. Just there you go. 4 in the middle, 1 each side, 6. So we go click, and it's asking me where do I want it. Well, I'm going to cut it and drop it in the middle. So if I accidentally move to the side, I'll right click. And there it is in the middle. And I'll deselect by clicking over on the side here. So why so many cuts? You don't have to. You could just use 1 there and 1 there. But then I have to get the length here and match it to the length here. I just don't think it's necessary for a beginner. So I'm going to go to face mode. So I usually push 3 on the keyboard. And then I'm going to circle select, pushing C, and you'll see my circle there is too big, so I'll scroll, just go down, and I usually select 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. And I will drop the circle select by right-clicking, or push escape, whichever works for you. And I'm going to do the same trick I did before, and I'm going to separate. I'm going to push P, and it's going to pop up with this separate menu. Now I'm going to do it by selection because I have those faces selected. So now over here I've got a new part, and it's just put .001 on the end. You might remember from the roof, but I'm going to deselect things because I find it a little confusing. So I push tab, go to object mode, so again check object mode, and deselect everything by just clicking in a grey area. Now I'll click on where the door is, and you'll see it's regular orange, so it kind of matches these other colours. It's not quite so red. Anyway, I'll double click that, and I'm going to call that Outhouse, not 001, but door. Oops, I'm not shouting. Ooh, caps lock, don't like that. Alright, so we got our door. Now, an outhouse door won't be quite as tall and won't be quite as wide. So I'm going to look directly on, making sure I push the X here. So it's called right orthographic. Now, if you take subjects at school, such as DVC, we call it at my school, graphics and design, you might call it, you'll learn about what the difference between orthographic and, I'll just move my mouse slightly. This is realism, where things get smaller the further they get away from you, the viewer. So if you look at the square here, it's quite wide, but further away, narrow. So that's normal, it's perspective. But for our editing purposes, we're going to be just looking straight on, and that means it doesn't get smaller the further away you get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it in the green or Y axis and in the blue Z axis. I'll do them one at a time. So I'm going to go S for scale. Now this is scaling again based on that origin point, and that's not quite where I want it. I'm not going to move the origin point. There's no point here. Excuse the pun. But what I am going to do is just change it to edit mode and highlight it. So when I scale it, it'll scale and stay in the middle. So I'll push S for scale, and I'm going to constrain it by pushing Y, and you'll see the green arrow there. So I'm just making it a little narrower. I think in my head that it should be probably about, I don't know, 95% the width before, so we'll give that a go. So we'll go S for scale, Y for the Y axis, and I'll go 0.95, and then I'll push return. So what did that do? Well, if I have a little bit closer look, hey, there's a little gap there and a little gap there. Well, probably a little bit too much. So let's Command Z, undo, and maybe let's scale it to 99%. Scale Y dot for the decimal 99. And you see that little gap there? That's kind of what I would expect for a door opening and closing. But for a toilet, there's usually an air gap down the bottom and a little air gap at the top. So let's make it shorter. S for scale, Z for the Z axis. That's the up and down axis. You can eyeball this if you want. I'm just going to go like that, and the number is pretty close to 0.85. So go with that if you want to, and then I'll click select. And most bathrooms or toilets that I've seen have a really good airflow gap down the bottom. I don't know, climbing in and out if you get stuck. G for grab. And I want to control its direction, so I'll push Z for the Z axis, and it means it goes up and down, and I can't make it go out of place. So I'll just put it where I think looks good. In this case, you'll see the number up the top there. It's 0.1 or something. So yeah, GZ 0.1. It just goes up. Do it how you like, but I would constrain it. So I've got my parts, got my outhouse door, and roof. So I'm hoping that's where you're at the moment. That's your modeling that isn't super complicated. The next thing I'm going to do is make the hinge. The hinge is pretty complex. I start with putting in the shape that is, I guess, closest to the hinge, or at least the most complex part. So I think that's the cylinder. When I add something, it's going to add down here where the 3D cursor is. So I go Shift A to add, and it brings up the add menu. Now it looks slightly different if you're in object mode or edit mode. So I think you should be in object mode, and edit will work, but you'll get some quirks. So just check you're in object mode, Shift A to add. We're adding a mesh, coming down to cylinder. Now this cylinder is way too big, but we can change some properties. If you've clicked something else, this cylinder properties list, it'll just have disappeared. So just delete it from your list in the scene collection, start again. So the vertices does not need to be high, so I'm just going to click that and drag it down. 3 is clearly not enough. Something along the lines of 6 to 12 would work. Now this radius is going to have to come right down. How big is a hinge? Well, I think it needs to, at least eyeball wise, be similar to the size of the gap between the doors. So that's coming down to 0.2. I think that's probably about right. The depth, again eyeballing it, that's come down a lot. I really don't know. Let's have a look from the end. I'm eyeballing it. That looks too tall. Change the depth down. Again, eyeballing it. So that's 0.24. The cap fill, that's the thing on the top. Is it closed off at the top? So here's a nice little drink. Is the top part cut off, or is there one? So I'm just going to say I don't want one. I'll go nothing. And then is it aligning to the world or the view? In this case, we'll just leave it because it's pointing straight up and down. And that's really everything else that I need. That will disappear as soon as I try to edit it. So if you're following along and you're wondering why is mine gone missing, because you've started to edit it. Delete it, start again. So anyway, this cylinder is going to be a hinge. So I'll double click it, name it, H-I-N-G-E, assuming I can spell. Now these things in the collection, that'll do for now. I'm not going to organize it anymore. So that's my object. I'm going to grab it. So I'm going to go G for grab, and in this case it can only go in the green and the blue. direction just because of the view I'm on. But if I just plonk it over around about here, that's kind of the height that I think my first hinge is going to go. I'm scrolling in and following and keeping it in the center of my screen. So going from object mode to edit mode, you can use the mouse. I tend to use the keys. So I push tab. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to use Ctrl R. That's my loop cut. Ctrl and R. Again, hovering over a vertical line. I'm going to scroll up on my mouse wheel, and it's going to ask me, is this what I want to cut? And I'm going to confirm, yes, left click. Now if I've moved up or down accidentally, I'm going to right click and keep it in the middle, and that's where my cut goes. Cool. So if I right click and deselect, oh, where'd my part go? Oh no, it's a small part, and sometimes your view stops being on it. So if you've got a full size keyboard, for your laptop you don't, but you can push full stop on there and you can zoom right in. But on a laptop, if you push the full stop, it brings up this, and it's not what I'm after. That's the pivot point, and I'm not trying to change that. So just looking at my object here, I want to separate it into pieces. So this ring running around the edge here, I want to highlight it. So if I actually hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a Windows keyboard, you will select all of them. Same for down here, but if I only use Option, it'll deselect the other one. So if you're new to this, hold down Shift as well. You'll see down here it says Shift and Option. I'll get both of them. So I'm essentially going to use a lightsaber and just chop my way through there. And the letter V, again, don't know where that came from, but it rips it. I don't want it to go some crazy place, so I'll right click and it goes back in its place. So it's been cut, but not separated. Now I guess I could have done it a different way, just like I did before. I'll just do the undo there and see if I can, yep. So I just undid it. I guess if I was really wanting to, I could go face mode and command click there. I think that's it. Oh, come on. Yeah, option, excuse me. I can go to face mode and I can option click here and get all the way around, and I could just push P and separate by selection, and then I get my separate part, but I wanted to show a new technique, so I'll undo that. I guess that's how you could have done it, but I'll go option shift and click, but that's face, so I'll go number 2 and I'll go back to edge select. So I'm going to get this edge, 1, 2, and I'm going to rip it. Push V to rip, and there it's ripped. Right click and it goes back in its position. Now, here's another tool I want to show you. I want to highlight everything linked to this area. So I'll get the faces. If I just push L with my mouse over it, you'll see it highlights the whole lot. If I have L with my mouse over here, it doesn't work, okay? So hover over the part and it'll highlight every part that's linked. That's a really useful tool for more complex things, but I just want to show it to you here. I'm going to make this section ever so slightly, well, not shorter. I'm going to move the top part here up a bit, and I'm going to move the bottom bit down a bit. So start with it all deselected. I do that by double tapping A. I think you can do it with like option A as well, something like that, but it's a habit from an old version. Yeah, so anyway, I'll highlight that whole part, L. Now I'm going to grab it and just move it up a bit, G, but I don't want it to go crazy places. I'm going to constrain it with the Z, and I need it just to go up a certain amount. You just can eyeball it. I think that number up in the top there is 0.02. So we'll type that 0.02. Oops, yeah. Another 0 in there, missed one. It's not really going to matter. Let's get the bottom one. L gets the linked parts. Again, G for grab, Z for the Z axis. Now if I want to go down, the opposite is minus. So I go minus 0.002, and it moved the same amount just down because I pushed minus. So I hope that isn't too confusing. Essentially a cylinder, slice, slice, and then move the top bit up and the bottom bit down. You can eyeball it. It's not mattering too much exactly how it looks. Now I'm going to put in the extra pieces. So I'll go to edge mode. I'll just get this edge here. I'm going to make a new piece that's not there. So if I just grab, it's going to deform it. I need a new piece. So E for extrude, and out comes this other section. I don't want it to go up and down crazy. I just want it to come in the Y axis direction. So I push Y, and There's no green line there for some reason. Usually it shows on screen. And I'll click where I think it's going to look good, but it is somewhere else. G, Y axis, G, Y, and then left click. Excuse me, I did the wrong mouse button. Now this usually gets a little bit thinner. I'm eyeballing this, so S for scale, and it's scaling based on where it was inserted. No, it's scaling based on the 3D cursor down here. So when I push scale, it's not doing what I want. So I need to just change what's up here to, I think, active element should do it. Scale, yep. So it's just that edge is active. So when I push S for scale, you'll see the dotted line. If I move in the direction of the dotted line, when I say I mean the cursor. So I move in the direction towards it, and then I left click to confirm. I'm going to grab this edge, and I'm going to shift click to grab this edge. I'm going to E for extrude and pull out. And I want to constrain it so I don't make it crazy, so I'm going to push Y for the Y axis, and now it's showing. And I'm just going to pull it out enough. I don't know what enough is, but I'll just deselect by double tapping A. I'll go to edge mode. I push 1 for that, that's up here. And I'm going to connect this edge with this edge. I'll highlight them both and push F to fill, and you'll just see one edge that's gone all the way along. I like the circle select, so I pushed C for circle, and I'm going to get that one, and that one as well. And you should see orange dots and orange lines in between. E to extrude, and again making sure it comes out in the Y-axis only. From here it does the odd little thing that I can't quite explain, but moving forward everything will be okay. I need to do some stuff here, just a little bit of a slice, so it will help with the texturing later. I'll repeat it, but I'm going to highlight that edge, and that edge, and that edge, and I'm going to do a little essentially cut, because this needs to unwrap so that a photo can be stuck onto it. But at this point, here, here, and here, it gets confused. So I'm going to use edges. You can find it all under this edge menu, but I never use those buttons. It's faster to do Ctrl E for the edge menu, and I'm going to mark a seam. So this is sharps. I want seams. Just be careful because that says mark seam. There's mark other things. I want mark seam. All right, mark seam. So that will change, and it will look a little red. So there's a little red line there, and there, and there. So again, it's just how does it unwrap so that it sits flat to put a photo on. Yeah. You can leave it like that. Often we like to make it a little bit nicer and a little bit round. So coming down into this section here, I'm going to look for the little button that looks a bit like a spanner or a wrench. When you hover over it, it'll say modifier properties. I have to add a modifier. It's a nice long list here. I'm going to make it round, and this is probably the most common modifier that I've used, subdiv surface. We just subdiv sometimes. So when I put it on there, it starts to round things. Now, the render, that's what the final output is. What you're seeing on screen is this one. Just make them the same. Otherwise, you'll be like, why does my end result not look the same? Here's the puzzling part. I don't know why that does this. I really don't, and why it doesn't do it here. Okay, I know why it does it here, but why not there? I'm not sure why not there. But what we'll do is we'll just put in some edge loops to stop this, and out here I'll put in an edge loop. So I'll go Ctrl R and hover over this, click yes, and then out she comes to about there, and that will be enough. It's low poly. From this distance, no one's going to see any other flaws. Ctrl R, one over here, click, bring it out. Again, it's not perfect. That little curve isn't quite what I want. If you're super fussy, cool, then just add in another one down here. You might notice this loop cut doesn't flow through here. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. But there are some important points about why, so I'm just going to leave those ones off because I just don't need it. This one will annoy me though. I'll pop one in here. I know I'll be able to see it from a distance. We're not going to go crazy with loop cuts. It's just about making it look okay from a distance. You can get more into that in other videos. I'd strongly recommend the Blender Guru video on the chair if you want to learn more about this. So anyway, this is our little model for a hinge, and it'll do for now, I think. I haven't put in any things like screws, because from a distance you just won't see it. I just want to have something that looks like a rusty hinge. Cool. So from the side here, that's where my hinge is going to be. And one thing that I like to do is to use another tool here. I'll just hide the details of that modifier. Is I'm going to duplicate it by using an array. I like this one. I click array, and okay, where's the other one? Well, it's kind of hiding in behind here because it's modified and it's made a second one, but it's done it in the X direction. I don't want it in that X direction where it kind of comes forward. So I'll change this X factor to 0. Now there's a duplicate, it's on top of itself. I want my duplicate to be up or down. In this case, the Z axis. So I'll just pull that one down to there. I don't know the exact number that it needs to be. And that will kind of change a little bit with the next step. But I'm just going to put it, hey, where would some Farmer Joe put their hinges on some outhouse? I think that'll do. Does it look believable? That's the idea. Well, at the moment they're just a little too far back. So we can grab those and go G and then X and bring it in the X direction. It only needs to be forward enough so that it's visible. At the moment it's not really that noticeable because of the colors. Some people put in different views so you can highlight different colors. I'm not going to for this video. G, Y, and the round part needs to essentially be in the front. So we're just looking here, is it in the right place? And I think my hinge is wrong way around, so I'm going to rotate it in the green axis. So I'm going to go R and then Y, constrain the Y axis, and it's going to be a 180. So I can just eyeball it, but I hate doing that. So I'm just going to type 180 and push return. So just a little bit of a rotate there, so that it sits flat. I'm not going to put a pin in there, no one can see. Right, so from that distance, there it is. Change that number. It's not going to be minus anymore, so get rid of that minus. There it is. Obviously you can just grab it and drag it or type it, whatever you like. But because I rotated it 180, then the offset also needed to change. Okay, so the next part is colors. Cool, so in view, I'm going to push the letter Z. And at the moment I'm in solid view and everything's grey. What I'm going to move to is material preview and everything's going to be colorful. See? Well, not really. It's just gone white. It's got the standard white colors and it's also using some built-in lights. Let's use this light and see what happens. Oh, nothing. Why? Well, that's because it's not this light that's being used. And you'll be like, hey, what's that? Why would that be a light? So if I was in rendered view, then that light would actually be the thing giving light to my scene, but it's not. There's a built-in one, and it's really nice, but you just can't see it. It just makes your lighting work to start with. We'll just leave it there. You got your different views that you can have a look through, but I just like the letter Z, and we're a material preview. Cool, so on the right hand side, I'm just going to start with the rust, I suppose. I'll click on the roof. Let's go down bottom here. It says material properties, so I'll click that one. And I can start playing in here. Don't. We're going to get into some stuff that will freak people out, but just chill. So we're going to look at them, strip across the top here. I've stayed in layout the whole time so far. Now I'm going to go to shading, and you'll see the layout's changed. There's a funny blurry looking photo in the background. That is kind of the world that's providing light to this scene, and you'll see a reflection on this sphere down here. So it's kind of trees and a bit of sky and a bit of ground. Now if I move my mouse over this part and start moving the scroll wheel, you'll see these little boxes. There's so many settings on here, it will freak you out. Don't worry too much. The default color, it doesn't even show here often in the beginning, but it's called material. So we'll call this rust and type and push enter, and its base color is white. If I click on that, it brings up a color wheel, and I could bring that to anywhere, and I could change it. Hey, that's kind of rust. And you also might be like, hey, but why is that changed the color of almost everything else, not the hinge? Well, there's a default material, and it's applied to the cube. And even though I pulled the door section off and the roof section off, well, that same material is applied in 3 places. So if I want to make that separate, I can click that and make it separate. So I'll click it, and you'll see now it's got a different name. And any change I do to this part will not affect the others. I'll just leave it bright green for now. It's fine, doesn't make any difference. So this base color, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use a photo. So middle mouse over here helps me to drag these things around. You may have scrolled and moved them to different places. Hopefully not. But I'm going to put in a whole lot of pictures, and they're going to plug into different places. They're going to connect with these little lines, I guess you could call them. So if I pull out here and let go, it knows I want to connect something to it. This is a really cool feature. I'm assuming I can just type image. Yeah, all right, well that's cool, a new feature, I like that. In the past you kind of did add, search, image, and then you've got one, and then you drop it, and then you grab it, and then you connect it. Well, that's a pain. Oh, I like that. That might be because I've plugged in Node Wrangler. I hope not. If this is working different to yours, come up to here and go Edit, Preferences. Oh, that's popped up strangely. And I put in screencast keys. You don't have that. But what you're going to come to is add-ons, and then type Wrangler, W-R-A-N, and then tick this box. I always use it. Just turn it on. I can't remember what it looks like in Blender without it. So we're just going to keep this, and we're going to open the textures. So I'm going to click open, and I'm going to come to my textures. Now this is brand new Blender, and I don't have any bookmarks. I'm not going to click add just yet, but I am going to go to where I store my stuff. So I have OneDrive over here, and I'll fast forward this, but Blender tutorial videos of Outhouse. Alright, so here's where I'm working all the time. So I'm going to add a bookmark. There's my Outhouse area. Now I work in the textures quite frequently, so again I might just pop in a bookmark, and later on I could remove it if it's not the project I'm working on. Recents is kind of useful, but I jump in and out of so many projects I don't tend to use that. So anyway, here's my textures. I've already dropped in some files. This isn't the Rust that I'm going to use, so I better go put in a new Rust right there. So I'll click cancel for now, and I'll go to Finder. So this is the Rust that I'm going to use. I'm going to just drag it and drop it over to here. Oh, I didn't mean to move, I meant to, I think it's Option drag. There we go. There's a copy, so it's still where it was, and then I put a copy over there. So this Rust plane in 3K, that's what I'm using. Now if I click on that, you'll just see that's the Rust. And I got these various other images. What the heck's that purple? You might think, well, that helps Blender to tell it, to make it look like a real thing, not just a photo. There's a gloss map. Where is it shiny? Where is it not? Reflections. I'm not using that one. That's a different color variation. So how dark and how white looking is it? Not really a big deal. So these are cool. Some users like to just drag one of these in, and I think you could drop it into Blender if it was open. Yeah, you can just drag and drop it, I think. I don't tend to use it that way, but yeah, I'll click open. I'll come to Outhouse and go to my textures, or just straight to textures, and here it is, the Rust that I want. I'm coming into 3K. If you're downloading it, yours might be different resolution. So I'll use this color variation, and I'll click open image. So you'll just see that has opened. The scale of it is a little not what I want. I'll jump into changing that now. Now, there is... Right, so Ctrl T, I'll just undo, because I was trying lots of crazy things there, because I couldn't remember what the shortcut key was. Yeah, so clicking on this, and Ctrl T pops out a texture coordinate and mapping node. So on this, I can play with the scale. So if I highlight all of those and then change the scale maybe to 2, you'll see it got repeated twice over. It hasn't actually shown any repeats. It's all to do with the unwrapping. I don't want to jump in and out of too many places right now, but if I come to UV editing and come over here and highlight that, essentially that is the unwrap of the top and where is it. So come back to my material preview. I can move this around, this part over here. If I highlight the square on this side, push G for grab, I can move it around. Now for this, I could scale it over here. And you'll actually see it's repeating because I've double scaled it. So I increased the size there, but I also can increase the scale here. So I'll change that back to 1. So it repeats 1 time. And then I come to the UV editing and change the size here. I think that's a little bit more intuitive to people. Also for sensible things, if this was real, rust would form and run down that way, because the rain would go that way. I think that this looks like it's got a bit of direction on it. So over here, I'm going to push R to rotate. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm not going to eyeball it. I'm just going to type 90 and push enter. So I think that rust looks like it's running down the roof a little more. Still perfectly flat and silly looking. So look at that. Any rust? Is that shiny? No, there's not. Well, how do we make it not look shiny? Because that's terrible. So I guess we better tell Blender, hey, it's not shiny. So over here we've got roughness. At the moment I can make it super rough or super shiny. Well, no, we don't want that. I certainly don't want a mirror for a rust texture. So I'm needing to put in more information. So let's do that. So let's try roughness and drag out and let go. I like that. Good new tool. Image, IM, and then it's a color. I push return. And this one is not actually going to contribute any color. It's just going to tell it where it's rough and where it's not. I'll click open, go to my textures, and I'm still working with this rust plane. And in this case, I need to tell it where it's rough. Now, this does not have a roughness map. It has the opposite. It has a gloss map. So when I select it and go open image, it's still going to be shiny because it's opposite. So I need to invert everything. So I go Shift A, and that's my add menu. There is a button for it, but Shift A is how I do it because it's keys, it's faster. And I want to invert INV, oops, Shift A, click on search, INV, invert, and I got this invert node, and if I just drop it over the top of this line, you'll see it changes from yellow to white, and then when I click it just drops in place. So instead of it being the super glossy thing, it flipped it to being the opposite. I can change that little factor there if I needed to. So now it's rusty and it's not shiny, so that's a good start. Now the scale should be the same, so I need to connect just like this one, vector, up to here, vector. A lot of this can be changed, but for now we don't need it. It's not giving me standard RGB or red, green, blue information. It's not contributing to color. So I'm just going to tell it non-color. There we go. It does make that a slight bit better, not going into details. We next want to tell it how should the light bounce, and that's the normal map. So we'll come down here. I'll click like this and drop, just like before, image. And it's going to have to be connected to this, so I'll do that right now and pop it in. And I'm going to click open, textures, back to my rust. Now this one's the normal map. Now normal maps are crazy purple, so if I want to actually see what the thumbnail looks like, it's this crazy purple one. NRM's in the name, normal map. So depending on what your view's like, this is rust plane with an NRM. I'll go open image. This is the one that makes the biggest difference. You'll now see it starts to look a little bit more bumpy. Well, when I finish it, it'll start looking bumpy. At the moment, it's just kind of an okay photo attached to it. So in here, I need a normal map. Shift A, search, NORM. Get the one that says normal map. Okay, there's two. So this one, you'll see a yellow dot. See how they match? And over there, you've got a blue dot. They match. So when I drop it, it's now yellow to yellow, purple to purple. And again, it's not contributing to color, it's just data. So we'll go non-color. Okay, now this is where the rust fleck bump can really come into its own. So the strength part, I'm going to just drag it up and make it even more and more and more obvious. So up to 10, there's a little bit too much. Let's go down. But you see that it kind of tells Blender how to make the light bounce. So make it to a point where you can see, and then just turn it down just a tiny bit. So that's rust. Okay, do I need to do it again for all of the other rusty stuff? No. Okay, so let's click that and go, I need a new texture. How about new? And then instead of making it from scratch, I'll go, hey, let's base it off one that exists already. Well, this one, that's my rust. Looks okay in places, like here, but not there, and not there. So we need to just unwrap it. I'm going to go with highlighting it all, deselect everything actually. Let's object mode, deselect everything, check that, nothing's highlighted. I'll get my hinge. I can either get it that way or click here. And what's happening is this is what we call stretching. I took what was an edge and pulled it out, and whatever pixels on the photo that were right where I pulled out from, it's just smeared that color all the way along. So let's come to UV editing, and we'll highlight this this hinge, and these are all the parts of the hinge, and you're like, well, that's not the same shape. Well, I did anyway. So I'll hover over here, and I'm going to push U to unwrap, and I'll do the easiest version first, and I'll use the Smart UV project, which will probably be suitable for this. And then you got different objects, different choices. I'll just go OK, and you'll see these are the different sections, and they are being applied over here. It's a little bit funky there, not really sure what's going on, and also it kind of confuses me when I start looking at the wrong photo. So I don't want the rust plane normal, I want the color variation, and then I can kind of see where everything goes. If I want to highlight parts like this, I can. It's a little easier on face mode. See, push 3 to get to face, then I'll get all of these ones and I'll see what is going on in what place. There's a little bit of stretching here which can be adjusted. I don't want to make it high poly, and it doesn't really like to cut very well here anyway. No one's going to see that, just leave it alone. But that'll work. From a distance it's okay. I don't really like the direction here, so let's just do it myself. U to unwrap. Instead of Smart, I'll just choose unwrap. Now that did it slightly differently because I did my own little seam down here and one over here, but you can't see it because I'm in material preview mode. So I go back to solid and tab to edit, deselect. You can just see that little red part, and you see that little red part there on the edge. Again, Ctrl E, how I did it, mark that seam, make sure it's marked. Come back to material preview mode, and we can now see I've got a rusty roof and I've got 2 rusty hinges. Okay, that outhouse at that color is triggering me, so let's go to shading, and instead of this base color, let's put it back to white for a short period of time, and in here this base color is going to get wood. Click, drag, drop, like that. The old way I would go Shift A, search, image. Same but different. So this image I'm going to connect, and it'll go black. Sometimes it goes pink if something's missing, but at the moment it's got no name here, but pink's a warning for it can't find what you're telling it to. I haven't told it yet, so I'll go open, and I'll go to textures. This is going to go to my wood planks, and I've got 3K and 6K. I'm not going to go 3K, sorry 6K, that's a bit silly. And I want the color variant. I don't know which one looks best. That one, or I think it was that one. Look pretty similar to me. Let's go open image. I don't like it when I can't see the whole file name, so I always change that. So when I'm error checking, now this unwrapping is ugly. So we'll come back to UV editing, and we'll highlight that whole thing and just see, hey, that's pretty crazy. So we're going to uncrazy it, if that's a word or words. Certainly not a sentence. Right, so we're going to chop 1, 2, and that's all I've got for there. I'm just going to tell it, hey, cut there if I need it to. Maybe let's try the fast version. U, unwrap, there it is. Ooh. Yeah, so we need to chop it. Let's start on the bottom. Edge mode, push 2. I need that one, holding down shift. Ooh, this is horrible, highlighting like that. Yuck. So let's go option shift and click the lot. See how it gets full edges? So I'm going to mark that, Ctrl E, mark that seam. And I need to mark at least one of these edges. You can do the lot if you like. Ctrl E, and I'll mark that seam. So now when I highlight and go unwrap, it won't do this horrid mess. U, unwrap. Excuse me, U, unwrap on the right hand side. So it's kind of working, but some parts the scale is really weird, and it's a whole lot easier if I can then get, say, this side, and then I can move it and it not have it, excuse me, over here, highlight with A and then G to grab and move that thing around. It seems to work a bit better. It also is nicer if the photo loaded is the wood that you're using. So I'll click this little object here, this little button, just to see it. And then I'll go to wood planks. So there it is. Hey, that looks like it should rotate 90. R to rotate, and I'll push 90 and enter. Looks a little bit thin. I tend to make it about 5 planks wide. So I'll push S to scale, and that's 4 planks wide. Let's make it 5. Now, this is going to now I'm pushing lots of keys in the background here. S for scale, G to grab, S to scale, and it's not showing up. I just noticed there's my screencast keys are on that side. They're not on that side. That's weird. Anyway, yeah, S to scale, G to grab, and you'd think, hey, if I was a farmer, I'd make it with a certain number of planks and make it a certain number of planks wide. Anyway, that's how I think. If I'm doing a bit of DIY, grab that bit, rotate it 90 degrees, of course. Scale it up. I'll choose some different planks. Maybe these guys. How many planks? 1 plank, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just a bit bigger. Again, just scaling it so that the edges kind of line up with an edge of a plank. That'll do. There is a repeat, so that one, those knots are repeating down here. So if that's going to bother you, GZ and you can move it so that, say, one of those cuts off down there and doesn't repeat somewhere else. If you've got some knots that just really bother you, again, deselect all, push C to select, and I'll just get that whole side over here. A to select that side, R to rotate, 90, actually push the keys properly, and return, and I'll scale it and move it on some different planks. It's really not going to matter a lot about which planks you put it on. See, that side could be the exact same as that side. You just can't see them at the same time, of course. Let's come around to here. Looking from the front, being careful not to highlight the back, so I need that front section only. I like circle select, so I'm just pushing C to circle select and getting all of those. With it highlighted over here, again rotating R, 90, enter, just constrains it to exactly the amount you want to rotate it. Scale it, S to scale, and dropping it. So I'm looking, that's kind of lined up. 1 plank, 2 planks, 3 planks, 4 planks, that's the 5th one. Need it wider, grabbed it, S for scale, G to grab, S to scale, G to grab, and just looking that it's same place. And I'm zooming around, making everything right how I want it. Let's change this door. It's going through different objects constantly. Again, tab to edit mode. The whole part's highlighted. And there's my door. Over here, I highlight the what's called UVs, and I'll rotate that. R, rotate 90, enter. Again, drop the circle select by right-clicking or pushing escape. S for scale. I just keep moving my mouse in that direction. The dotted lines are sort of away from the center of this object, and again scaling it so it's all about the same. So in this case I don't want it 5 wide because this is the door, so I need it smaller. I think this makes it about 4 or something. So if we do it this way, one cool thing is you can make it the same width, but one silly thing that I did up here with my cuts, I didn't think about this section. I wouldn't do that if I was the farmer, but I'll just leave it as it is. I'll get my planks there, do it to the same sort of scale. I think they need to be bigger. Yeah. Yeah, with that sort of lined up on that side, looks a little crazy. Yeah, if I was making something like a real door, I'd make it a certain number of planks wide. So we don't really want, you know, a little sliver off the edge there, but that's what I've got. Hopefully no one's going to look at your animation with a ruler. But yeah, we've got wood here. It's, I think, got no name at the moment. It's called rust, with no dot on the end. So I'll rename that to being wood, because I have this one here. It's called Rust 001. I'll rename it to Rust. Is there one still called Rust? No, because I named it wood, so I can call this one back to Rust without the numbers. And yeah, I've got wood, I've got rust. The only other thing I really need to do is make this displaced. It has to go up and down. Now this is extremely low poly. It's 1 poly, really. It's 1 face. So I'm going to I'm going to subdivide it. I right click and choose subdivide, and then I'll come over here and change the subdivisions right up to 10. So what this is doing is giving more geometry. Geometry is it's essentially all of the faces or edges or vertices, depending on what you're looking at, and these can be pushed up or down. Now this subdivision isn't enough detail to allow it to make a beautiful corrugated iron shape, but it's the start. So we'll add another modifier, and we're going to subdivide this, and this allows, in this case, 2 levels, extra levels of subdivision. We can actually count all of the subdivisions. I'm not. Who wants to count? Not me. But we can get Blender with its, I think it's overlays. Somewhere in here we can hit statistics, and it'll tell us how many faces there are. So on what I've got highlighted, it says there's 121 faces. So there's a whole lot there to be pushed and pulled, but this modifier allows me to get more subdivisions to push up and down. So I'm going to add another one, and it's going to be called displace, right there. And then the texture I need to load, so I'm going to hit new, add a new texture, and I'll come and load that texture. So down here it's the displacement map, there's my texture, it's image or movie, and then I need to actually load the grey file. So I'll come to open, and then I'll get my textures. I don't really like that view, so I'll come back to my corrugated iron sheet. These are all my file names, nice and easy to read. It's only here where I kind of want to see the shape. So there's some previews and normal maps and so forth. Essentially it's just a grey picture up and down. So this one, the displacement, I'll use this one here, nice and small. You don't need the this disp 16, that's 16-bit, it makes the file bigger. You'll see the size there, you just don't need it. Open the image, and it's doing nothing at the moment. I'm going to push tab, and you'll see from this angle it's got some corrugations. Now I think I know in my head what how bumpy corrugations are, but you never have a good idea of what corrugated iron looks like. You tend to overdo it. So if we go image and just have a look how bumpy that is, it's not that bumpy. So these are my reference images. It's always a good idea to have reference images. Oh look, hey, some nice rusty corrugated iron. That's what they kind of can look like. Cool. Alright, so back to here. It's not running the way I would do it, and it's also running a little too high. It's kind of not that smooth. So we'll deal with the smoothness first. We'll come to the modifiers. The subdivision should be first. So that gives more geometry. So you'll notice when I click, it goes smoother. And if I go up again, it'll get smoother and smoother. And at some point, my computer will crash. Yeah, so let's not, chase down the blue screen of death. Somewhere around 5 is optimal. You'll get enough of the corrugations, the up and down, but not excessive amounts of detail. The next thing I'm going to do is change how high it is. So let's have a look around a lot of these settings so we can change the strength. Let's try that. That's the easiest one. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can change, but let's just change the strength. And the direction, let's try X, nope. Y, nope. Z, nope. Alright, so I'm just mucking around. Preview, it's not what I'm on. Image, color space, no. Source, single image, no. Repeat, flip axes, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so how to find what I found. Right, so it's under image. I think it's, yeah, I went settings. Went down to here, mapping. So you're looking for mapping and tick the flip axes. The other way would be a little bit of a hassle. Now, if I was a farmer, would I trim those edges? Probably. If you don't like how they're trimmed, the subdivision surface is what's causing that to round, so you can add in extra. So if you loop cut one there and loop cut one here and bring it out, the rounding will be different. So you'll see it's less curved there, but that one I left alone. So it's up to you what you do. Loop cut there, loop cut here. Those are quite standard ways to do it. I'll undo all of those. I'll show you another way. If I get the outside loop, deselect everything. Let's get this outside loop. I'm on edge. So up here, edge select, I just want to select the edges. I don't want you to get just one little piece. I'm going to option click, and that'll get the whole edge. 1, 2, 3. And let's get this other side. So they're all highlighted. Let's use this edge menu. Again, I don't like using buttons, so Ctrl E. and I want the edge, this edge crease I can change. So it's about there where I start getting into buttons. Up here on the, I push T, that gets some of the buttons on the left. I push N, that gets the transform and item and tools and so forth over here. So let's re-highlight these guys. 1, 2, push the right buttons. So over here we've got information around the edges. So if I tattoo with them, I can actually pull out the edges. There we go. That's the one I want. Mean vertex crease. If you bring it all the way out, it'll get completely square. We don't need that. Let's be realistic. The edges will rust off a bit. Someone would have trimmed it. It looks a little bit nicer with a bit of a curve. Yeah, that'll do. So that one's mean vertex crease 0.4. If I push back to edit mode, it shows most of what I want. You can see the roof cutting through. So I'm going to go G for grab and then Z for the Z axis and just come up until it doesn't go any further. I don't want it to float in the sky, but I also don't want it to cut through the base. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so that's my main parts made. It's not ready for animation, but what we can see is a beautiful looking door on there. We want to be able to rotate that and get it, Z, coming out and pivoting on the correct point. That's the next part. So we're onto animation. It's mostly around the door. So I want to make this piece of the hinge 2 parts, or 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So this object has an array on it. So let's have a look at that, and let's go to the array, and I'm going to apply this array and have it permanently be there. So I'll have a duplicate copy rather than it just being one I can turn off and on the screen. That's just show in the viewport. I'm going to apply it. So I'm going to, this little arrow to the right here, click next to it, and I'm going to go apply. So now I don't have a copy, I duplicated. I've got real geometry here to use. But what I want is go to this piece and I'll push L, and I'll go over this piece and I'll push Shift L and I'll get both. Now these bits are going to be ripped off and become separate, so I'll go P to separate by selection. So I've got hinge and hinge 001. I'm going to deselect everything, push tab, and click in a grey area. But I want the door and I want those hinges. Here's a dumb story. Bring the children, 1, 2, the hinge 001, to the parent. Shift click the door. Bring the children to the parent. That's my story. Children to the parent. So I'm going to parent these bits. They're going to be stuck on that forever. Control P. Now I'm going to set it to the object there. So choose the top one. I'm going to deselect. So if I click that, it's actually hidden now. It's like, where is that? If I click the door, you'll see the outhouse door. But underneath it, there's more. But wait, there's more. You see that little bit? That is like another triangle. So what it's got is the hinge as part of it. But the outhouse doesn't have its part, but you'll see the hinge. That's part of the door now. So if I was to click the door, I can grab that and the hinge goes with it. That's what we're after. Now I want this to spin based on where the hinge is, because I need it to rotate and not have the hinge kind of come apart. That looks kind of weird. So if I click in here, what I want is have it to rotate around this origin. So if I highlight this and rotate it, it's kind of doing weird stuff. So I need to click the door and I need it to pivot around where I want it to. So if I went RZ, you'll see it's pivoting around this bit down here. I need it to pivot around that. So my little trick is Control R. I'll just make a little slice there. I don't have to. I could use the top point, but I'm going to just make a little slice so I've got a little point to have it spin around. I push 1 to go on vertex mode, and I need the origin to go to that selected. It's not the simplest part, but I'll just try my best to show it. Now search, I push Fn or function F3, and that brings up my search command. So it allows me to find commands that I just don't know where it is. So this is going to be origin to cursor to selected. So now my 3D cursor is right there based on what I selected. I can highlight that whole thing and go rotate, and it's rotating at the moment based around the cursor. It's probably still not the best option, so I'm going to, with all of this, go to edit mode, and I want to put the origin function F3. I'm going to go origin to cursor is what I want. Origin to 3D cursor, and that has to be in object mode. So now my little dot there, that's origin, it's going to sit right there. So if it comes in as a separate object, it'll be placed based on the coordinates here, not the center or anything else. So I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to rotate it around the blue axis, and you'll see it swings the way I want. I had to push Z to get that to come up, so I'll push escape and come back. So R to rotate, and if I don't push Z, it will swing in the wrong place. And the transform controls the positions on screen at the moment. You can also see them over here, and you'll see that the Z rotation number changes. So that's what I'm going to keyframe. Might as well have a go doing that now. Animation. Right, let's tell it to be right where it is. Insert a keyframe, I for insert. I'll tell it, remember everything about what it is. It's location, it's rotation, and it's scale. So I just do the lot. You don't have to, you can just do rotation, but I'll do the lot. I'll move forward in time. It's my favorite mistake to make, is to forget to go forward in time. And then when I go to put the next keyframe in, I replace the originals. So yeah, go forward in time. I'm going to go 30 frames forward, and I'll rotate based on around the Z axis, and you'll see the keyframe over here, the data changes, RZ. And if I want that to open, or in this case, eyeball it to 120 degrees, and I can click it right there, or I could type it. And then I need it to remember that keyframe. So I can do the whole lot myself, or if I hover over this one, I can just push I, and that's keyframed. Just that one attribute. So if I replay that, I just hit play, and it goes forward and swings. Now it'll sit there, and you'll see that playhead will go forward till the end. The default is 250 frames. I'll hit pause, and I can change that end by just clicking on the number and typing 30. So it's going to make 30 frames, and I hit play, it's just opening, and then it'll just replay. Now when I'm ready, I can click camera, and I kind of say, hey, my camera point in the right position? No. So you see that pale rectangle? The easiest way to move the camera, push the letter T, we'll come to view, and then there's a tick box. Lock to 3D, no. Camera to view, that one. So it goes red around the outside. I'm going to hold shift, middle mouse, and then zoom out just a little bit, and I got my camera in the right place. Untick it, so it's in the middle. That's one way to do it, and also I can keyframe the camera position if I really want to get fancy. Let's go with the camera. Let's pause this play. Okay, let's keyframe it, everything. I, location, rotation, scale. Let's move forward in time. Let's maybe lock camera to view. Little zoom or something like that. Yep, something. And then you can see that the location and the rotation has changed, but not the scale. I didn't move it or bigger or anything like that. So I, location, rotation, scale, and that put in the keyframe on the 30th frame. So if I hit play, both the camera and the door will move. I'm not going to put in the little moon shape on the front. I think that's a little bit too advanced, but I really like this. Next, we want to turn it into a video that you can go, hey mum, look what I made at school. Untick that camera to view business. Just hit play and make sure it didn't go crazy. Yep, so it's in the right spot. To make it look like a cool render, we need to check what does it actually look like. So it's got one light source and it's got some pretty interesting shadows. Let's put it into ground, Shift A, add in mesh, that's the plane that's ground. I'll go S for scale, G grab, pull it down and pop it about there. I'm going to S for scale, just make it massive. I've got a ground, that'll do. Yep. So I don't, at the moment, I don't see the edge of the plane that I've inserted, and that's all good. This render engine is fast. It's using the render engine Eevee. If you want more photorealistic and you don't get these gaps where the light goes through, you're better off with cycles. However, it takes longer. So there's a trade-off. For this video, I'm just going to use Eevee, unless it annoys me a lot. Yeah, we'll just leave it like that. There's one light source that's not strong enough, in my opinion. So let's add in a new light source. Shift A to add. Come down to light. There's different kinds. I'm going to use, in this case, a sun. It's a super bright light. Let's go GZ, bring it up. When we come over on the right hand side, I can change the sun's strength. Turn it right down. I just want a sort of global sort of sun. I'll rotate it that way. Might change it to an area light. This way I can have a few other things like size that I can change. How change that down. I don't really want a shadow on that side. I just want to fill in that space a little bit. So to render a single picture, I'll come over here and I'll just do one really good quality picture. Might just play forward somewhere around there. Where do I like it the most? Yeah, something like that. Rendering. I'm just going to render, and I'm going to go single image, and it will render the frame that I'm on. So just telling you what's going on here. It's frame 8. The time that has elapsed is here. This is the remaining time. That's not accurate. I'm doing a bunch of other things with my device at the same time. How much memory it's using, and then the sample rate over here. It's climbing all the way up to 4096. That's going to take forever and a day, like it says. So I go image, and I can't save because it hasn't finished. But I actually think it doesn't look too shabby with 120 samples. So let's say I did want this one, but it's not ready for me. I can close and just check that it's not running anything else. No, nothing down the bottom. So we'll change it back from cycles to Eevee, render image. We should get one really quickly. That's okay, but I don't like how the light's creeping under there or there. It's a nice little image, and it's nice and fast, so I can go image, save as. But if you've got the time and you want better quality, then we'll go with Eevee. I'm going to change my max samples and my minimum samples, my sampling down. Alright, tick denoise, usually get a good result, and I'm going to change max samples down to 100. And then render that image. Alright, so that'll climb up through and be done in about 30 seconds. There's a bit of noise there, it'll get buffed and polished out a little later. There's a little gap there, I guess, between the hinge. You see it with a little shadow, but I think it looks like a hinge. Looks like it's got corrugations on it. 10 more seconds to go. Cool, so I've got a single image. I can go save as if I want to. What I really like to do is to make animations. So how do I do that and not waste my time? Well, firstly, save your project. Don't be naughty like I just did and leave it as untitled. We'll go to Outhouse, we'll go to Models, and this one is Outhouse 2023, save as. Now, the thing that's quite important is to send the textures. Send? Where am I sending it? Okay, well, I don't want to render this all by myself. I'm going to use an outside service called Sheepit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack my textures. So I tick this little box, and you see the hover over it says automatically pack all external files into the .blend file. Cool, so down here it said packed 5 files. So now when I go File, Save As, I'll hit plus one more number. It's not 2024. So I just put V2 on there, and I hit Save As. Notice it's 1.1 meg. I hit Save As. Come on, save. I'll do it one more time. Look at the size difference. So it's got all the photos inside. If I hit the plus, it just goes up a number. It's really helpful. Keep doing that sort of thing. So now we're going to go to Sheepit. Meh. So Sheepit is a render farm, and what we do with Sheepit is start by logging in. And then we're going to, that's my face, not that wide. I just did a 3D thing of myself, but anyway, get started. Now, I'm on Apple. You might need to download the client and so forth, but I'm going to add my project now. So I'm going to choose the file, and I'll go to my favorites because that's where I had it, and models, that one I'll do there. I'll go open, and I'll choose send this file, and I'll upload. NAN, just by the way, is not a number because it hasn't sent any percentage yet. And up she goes. I don't know if they're using this area down here anymore. It doesn't matter a great deal. Now there's a wait list. Have a look over here. It says I'm going to be first on the wait list. That's because I've done a whole lot of rendering. And so have other team members. So I've got 33 million points. My whole team's got 400 million points. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So that gives me extra points, and I end up going first on the list. So once this updates, it'll make a little bit, well, fully uploads, I should say, not updates. Cool, so it's going to render, only have one of these tick boxes. So I'm going to just leave the CPU ticked. You can do one or the other. I lied. I'll use NVIDIA. I've got a couple of NVIDIA cards running, I think, somewhere else. So the start frame is 1, end frame is 30, and then I'll just go add this blend. And what's going to happen is all of these little squares are frames that are going to be rendered by people on Sheepit. It doesn't get rendered straight away, but once this reloads, all those nice people out there rendering, let's click, oh, there, look at all those people. They're all doing the renders for me. And what's happening is, let this, whoever this person is, Hofbeck's always on. But yeah, these people are doing some nice little renders for me. Ooh, some of them are done already. That one's done. That one's done. It says it'll be done in 3 minutes. Let's just kind of, you know, get it done. Do, 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 do. Watch some good music while we're at it. Not the channel I was after. So sometimes what can happen is you get stuck on one and you can ask for a partial. What I'm going to do. So it's all done. Downloading the frames. Couldn't connect to the internet. Rubbish. It's supposed to save you some time, but I don't know if it did. So in here I've got all my images and I'm going to string them all together. I like using Premiere Pro. I need to learn how to use some other stuff, but they're all quite similar. Let's go to a new project. I'm glad I set these up for screen recording textures. Okay, so what I need to do is get my renders into here. So let's go to Finder. Let's go up a folder, so that's the one I want. And I needed to bring it over here. Date today is the 23rd Jan. Alright, so that's my only set for today. Just making sure I didn't put a space in there. Yeah, no space after that. No space at the front. Cool. Great. Cool. So it's all in there. I can now import the media. Here's my renders. There's my set. Now, very important. I don't know why, but Mac hides the little tick box I want under a button, show options. Seriously? Why? I don't know why. Look at this. What are you hiding? What have you got to hide? Nothing to hide, really. So I'm just going to go to number one. It's, for some reason, reversed order. So number one, and make sure it's got that tick there in blue for my computer. But you're on Windows, I think it sits there without being hidden. So go to number one, Computers can count. It'll go all the way up to 29. I'm missing the 30th, but I'm not fast. I'll click import, and this wants permission, so yeah, we'll go yeah. This is a sequence. It's not 30 individual images. Okay, so when I double click it, it comes up here, so I can hit play, and that's essentially what I want. Cool, so that's my door. If that's what I want in my media, I drag and drop it down here, and that's what it's going to look like. A little bit later, I'm going to put some cool music by Channeled on here, like Channeled. I also like Tool. You can't really see that. And it's too hot to wear my Channeled hoodie. No. Cool. Yeah, so shout out to them. I'll just change my settings here. I'll go export, the media. Alright, so let's give it a better name. Oh, edit that out. Alright, so Outhouse 3? Yeah, Outhouse 3. Cool, so I've got a silly name, got the place, preset. You can change it, you don't have to. I like to go more presets, and I just go something, it's going to come up on YouTube, so I might as well just put it out here for YouTube, full HD. I'm not going to put it down there on 4K Ultra, that's crazy. I didn't have those export settings anyway. Here's my summary, it's H.264, and I just use a preset. That's generally what I do, and export. And out she comes. My video's been exported successfully. Let's go find it. Right, so if I come here, this one isn't in a folder. I don't like it when it's not in a folder. I should have put it in one, but I'll just play it. And it goes alright. If I pause it at certain places, it's a little bit of a soft sort of edge there. It's all to do with my settings. The wood doesn't have any thickness, but I kind of like it. It's a little fast. Hope you like it.